Satish, have you ever seen an Indian uncle say, I'm scared?
Apart from you?
Exactly. Growing up, I don't think we ever grew up around vulnerability. We grew up around authority figures, mainly male,
Very true.
who processed every emotion, whether it is joy, pain, fear, happiness, with one of three reactions, right? One was just a clearing of the throat, or there was the reading of the newspaper a little louder. Right? The newspaper shook with a little more when you did something that was thing, or it was a beta chai leke aao, right? That was the level of sort of emotional vocabulary that they had. And when you think of today as leaders, now that we have seen that, we've grown up with that, it's so difficult for us to bring that emotional vocabulary to leadership almost. Because on one hand, yeah, great leaders are supposed to be vulnerable. We've all read the book, heard the TED Talk, but then our brain goes, what nonsense, right? Q4 deliverables are here. How do you balance those? Let's take that mask off, right? Let's talk about vulnerability.
So, vulnerability is the new buzzword in the corporate world. Thanks to Brené Brown, everybody wants to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think it would be good for us to just peel the layers and really talk about what is it when you talk about vulnerability. What does that mean?
Yeah, I hear you there, because all of us have our own versions of almost what vulnerability is. I think it's, in some sense, the courage to be seen fully, even when we can't control how that will be received. Because a lot of leadership for us growing up was about this image. I want to build this image of what a leader is. I think it's also having the courage for a founder to say, hey, I've never led at this scale before. We're figuring it out, but I'm here to listen, here to learn. I think that's vulnerability. It's a manager saying, yeah, I've had a tough day today and I'll need your help with X, Y, Z. It's a leader saying, hey, it's them admitting a bit of, hey, we tried this, we failed, nothing's worked. What do we do?
I love that. I love how Brené Brown, just like you explained it, is able to use vulnerability and courage in the same sentence, same breath. And if courage is not acting because there's no fear, but acting in spite of fear, I think vulnerability is able to talk about that fear, right? But I think it's very important to also think about what it's not.
Very true.
Because the versions you see sometimes can dwell in two extremes. On one side, you've got this very cosmetic vulnerability, which is very polished, TED Talk like.
A good LinkedIn post on it.
Yeah, which is inspiring, but it doesn't reveal anything. On the other extreme, it's a compulsive vulnerability where it's a complete download with no boundaries, everything, everywhere, and zero container.
And that's more harmful than helpful.
Yeah, I think vulnerability is done with intention not to impress or to unload, but to build trust, to build connection, to build empathy. And that's when it works.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think for me, it's about being able to name uncertainty. It's about inviting input from others. It's owning that emotion that we're feeling in this space and to talk about it genuinely. It's staying in the room even when we have conflict. It's staying in the room even when it's difficult. So I think the question for a lot of managers is, and leaders today, founders today, is how do you lead powerfully while still being vulnerable? How do you balance those two?
Yeah. I think the most powerful framework or an insight I've seen obviously is from Brené Brown. And she says this, like, the obstacle to courageous leadership, that's what we're talking about here, is not fear, it's armor. It's armor that we put on.
Yeah.
It's the instinct to protect, to perform, to project the confidence even when we are not sure. And she calls it armored leadership, where it's outside it's all confidence and inside it's fear and anxiety.
And you're crumbling.
Yeah. And this is how it sounds like. I can't fail. I need to have all the answers. I need to work harder to really prove my worth. And my ego can't handle feedback. That's such a big one for the leaders. You really want to put that armor up. I know that the temptation to be like that unbeatable Iron Man, the invincible Rajnikant, or be Shah Rukh Khan who has all the answers. And I personally know that armor really well because that is my first instinct. The minute I feel like I'm losing control, armor comes up. Armor is heavy. You can't carry it forever. And it comes from the single belief that if I show my weakness, I lose respect. And I think that's very important to remember. And it's also important to realize what the flip side looks like, because flip side is not soft. It's being authentic to who you are. And I think personally, I've seen you do that really well, not just with us, but the way you're able to open yourself up to the world. And I think people connect with you so well because of it. authentic leadership, it's rooted in courage and it's rooted in connection, and it brings certain amount of clarity in the room. And this is how it sounds like, hey, I don't know all the answers here. This is what I'm wrestling with. Ouch. I think this feedback is going to hurt my ego, but I'm going to be open.
Anyway, yeah.
I don't have all the answers, but I'm here. And when you lead that way, you build that psychologically safe space for others, and we create that belonging.
Yeah. I think it also gives people that space to then echo that, right? It's not just a, hey, I'm being vulnerable. It's, hey, we can all be open and real with each other.
And that's important, right? Because people don't trust perfection or perfect. They trust honesty. Armor may protect your ego, but the cost of it is you lose your authenticity.
Yeah. And you distance the team. Yeah.
And armor may impress people, but it's the authenticity that moves them.
Yeah.
You're able to lead with so much more meaning and purpose when you're able to open yourself up.
I think success, sometimes people will celebrate with you, but failure is when you really connect with people.
Very true.
And it's those moments knowing that, hey, they also went through this and they're still here. You really feel endeared to each other. And I find that teams connect so much more when they have that openness.
Just talking about the real examples, right? The shift when you go from armor to authenticity. I think one great example is what happened to Microsoft. Before Satya Nadella took over, Steve Ballmer was
jumping around stage, Steve Ballmer.
He was such a classy example of what armored leadership would look like. Loud, certain, full of confidence. The vibe was, we are Microsoft.
Yeah.
We know everything.
I remember him bashing the iPhone when it first came out. This will never succeed, but yeah.
We know it all, right? And that really sent Microsoft on the downslide. But when Satya Nadella took up, stepped into his role as a CEO, he did something very courageous. He decided to take that armor off. Yeah. And he decided to lead with vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think that made so much of difference because it was he acknowledging that, hey, Microsoft, we've lost some of that edge.
There's a pivotal email he wrote also where he talked about
Absolutely. And he talking about the fact that, hey, we need to unlearn some of this arrogance that, and he took the culture from we know it all to learn it all. And that was such a shift. And that is what authenticity could do to your company.
I love that. Satya Nadella is such a good example. I think he was able to do it at the workplace. Also, he was very open about being a parent. I think his son has cerebral palsy and how that changed him, not just as a leader, but also as a human.
Absolutely.
Brought empathy into their family. He's such a good example of a leader who was able to be vulnerable yet strong and lead a massive company through a huge transformation. It starts there. If you say, how do you build vulnerability or culture of vulnerability in our team? It starts with the leader, right? Because who you are is what you get. As leaders, when we model it, it frees people to do that. Some great practices I've seen teams do. Some of our teams do this. We obviously talk a lot about our highs or successes. We create space within our team huddles to quickly share one low from your week. That balance works, right? You want to talk about, hey, this is all that's going great. This is the Instagram version of my life. But this is also, hey, where I struggle this week. It also is humbling, and it's a little bit of letting go of ego with your team and opening yourself up.
I remember during COVID, there was a day when we were supposed to, and we were working online then, and we were supposed to have one of our biggest teams was having a launch. We were supposed to have all hands-on meeting to just orient ourselves on that campaign. Just around that day, 3 of our team members lost their family. And we said, hey, what are we going to do today? Obviously, we can't launch. And I said, hey, we're going to not launch today, obviously, but we want to keep that call open and people can just join. And people just joined and they came and they just sat there, they cried with each other and left. And when you're able to create that space, it is so powerful.
That just realness, right? If we're able to bring a team to a space where we can be us and then hold space for each other rather than giving advice or any of that, just to hold space and say, I hear you, that's it. And to also have that space within one-on-ones, within team debriefs, within, hey, project is done, can we talk about it? That space is such a powerful one to create because we find that, hey, use rituals to mark emotion, right? That it's absolutely okay to break down an affair or to say, yeah, I'm going to miss this, right? Then, or celebrate recoveries when people come back, to take a moment to say, hey, you're back. I think there's so much that teams, managers, leaders, rituals and practices they can do to build that into their culture. Because a culture of vulnerability is actually one of strength, not of weakness.
Very true. I love what you said. I think designing these opportunities for your team to practice it something we have to design. We have to do it intentionally. One company which has done this well is Pixar. Obviously been consistently one of the most creative companies in the world, and one of their secret weapons, and they call it brain trust, brainstorm,
Interesting. Yeah.
or brain trust. And this almost like a rhythm or a ritual they have is where directors bring their unfinished, messy, semi-finished, still with the rough edges,
Nice.
those films, and they share it with their peers. And it's almost saying, hey, I'm not done with this. And it's still quite messy, but tell me what I'm not seeing here. And it's such a powerful thing to do, especially in the world of creativity, because the temptation is we want to bring out that final product and amaze everybody, right? But to be able to bring something that you put so much of yourself in and that could completely go off, that's vulnerability right there, and say, hey, tell me, what does this look like? And I think just doing that has made them so much more sharper creatively. And when you're able to do that, when you're saying, hey, it's okay to bring messiness, then you're almost giving people permission to be vulnerable. Then when you do that, people go from, just being in a suit of I need to perform to, hey, let's collaborate and figure this out together.
Yeah. So to every leader out there, as you take this journey of removing some of the armor and being real with your team, know that they don't need a leader that's perfect. They need a leader that's present.